to today's lecture. So, today we will be looking at need analysis and design for experience. So, as we know that in the need analysis, we have to see the primary issues that are there that the user is facing, and we have to identify which needs to be solved. At the same time, we have to understand who is our target audience and their present state. So, with the present product or system that they're interacting with, what kind of problems or issues they are facing, and then the fitting outcomes or goals, that what are the outcomes and goals that we want, depending on the kind of interaction we want the user to have with the machine and the experience they want, and also to propose the recommendations for the same, that how it can be redesigned so that to give it a certain, to cater to the needs of the user. So the purpose of need analysis is to define the design goals and constraints and to develop an understanding of the user and their activities. So, like we have seen in the previous lectures also, that identifying the need is one of the most important steps, because we need to know that the product we are going to be developing, whether it is desirable or not. So, if there is no need, the product that we are coming up with may not be desirable at all, even if it is viable to create, but still it will not be something that the user wants. So, that is the reason why the need identification becomes really important for us. So, some of the steps that are involved in the need analysis, the, we can say, the activities that are there are investigation. So, of course, the first step here is to do a background research and to understand the user and the needs of the stakeholders. So, for one kind of a problem, there may be many different types of stakeholders that will be involved. We have already seen in the previous lectures how we do the stakeholder mapping. So, now we are investigating this problem field and conducting our research using our methods and trying to understand the needs of our stakeholders, and our stakeholders may have different types of needs as well. The next is the analysis part. So, the information that we have received from the investigation that we did in the first step, wherein we maybe talked to the stakeholders, we got some questionnaire filled up, or held some interviews or focus group discussions, or some observational studies that we conducted. So now all that data that we have gathered with us, so we will be now analyzing this, and this will be analyzed to understand their pain points, that where is the issue with the certain situation. If you recall, in one of the first few lectures, we had discussed the case of water portability, that how the water can be, sent to these remote places where they do not have the facility. And there, if you recall, we had discussed the different pain points from the perspective of all the stakeholders, like how the user, who is the final user of the water, what are their pain points, like they miss, the time in the morning because they have to keep aside 1 hour for fetching water. For healthcare workers, who were the stakeholders, because there are problems that are being caused because of the dirty water that people are drinking, or even the people who are delivering this water, what kind of issues they are facing. They have to travel during certain bad weather conditions and bad roads, bad infrastructure, bad connectivity. So we had then discussed, so these are the pain points that we will be coming up with after the analysis of the data or the investigation that we have done. Now, the next is the specifications, where the objectives are listed out. So, we are collating this into defining and coming up with objectives. We are creating the assumptions, and design constraints are specified here. So, do we have certain assumptions here, and any kind of constraints, whether it is monetary, whether it is practical, or any other. So, all of those have to be listed, because we have to see whether the problem that we have come up with, whether it is feasible to carry forward with or not. And the last step here is the documentation. So, all the data analysis and design decisions are documented, and they are kept for further use, because we have already discussed earlier that how design is a constant process. It is iteration based, it is non-linear, and of course it needs to be improved after a certain time. So once the solution has been rolled out, we may again take the feedback, again take the pain points, and we may start the process of solving those pain points again. So for that reason, the documentation becomes a very important step. So the objective of need analysis is, now first is, who are the users. So unless we know about the users, we will not be able to come up with, for example, say creative or innovative solutions, because ultimately we are designing for the user. So we have to define our audience, we have to understand first ourselves, and then clearly have the attributes of our user, the kind of wants, likes, dislikes, preferences, pain points, and basically we can maybe say the SWOT analysis of the user. We need to be very clear with that, and for that we may also create the persona, focusing on the certain kind of demographic that we are looking for finding solutions for. Next is, what do the users want and what do they need. Now wants and needs, they are two very different things. So one may want a Ferrari, but they may need a Maruti Alto, that may also sort of do the job. So wants and needs, we have to see what is most feasible, viable. Based on that, the wants and needs can be marked out, and the wants can wait, but the needs are something that are really important, really urgent, and they need to be catered to at the get go. And wants are something that even if one doesn't get those, they will still be okay, but needs is something which is imperative. So we have to understand the wants and needs, differences between those, so that we can focus on the most important and relevant problems at hand. So the third point is, how are they solving the problem now? So now, if there is, for example, if we assume there is a mobile application that we are using for ordering food, so, and the website or the application does not really have a proper structure of, for example, saving the information of the favorite foods of the user. So the user may create their own way of knowing that what foods they liked previously. Maybe they will make a note of it in the phone itself, in the notepad, so they can refer to it when once they open the application. They will refer their notes and they will enter that particular food item there. So they may find their own shortcuts in solving their own problem. So this will inform us the goal, that this is a problem that the user is facing, or a challenge, or this is how they are finding their way about this kind of a need that they have. So that will give us the goal, which is to incorporate a system or a feature wherein the user can be shown the items that they have frequently ordered. So that will be beneficial for the user, because they will now see their favorite meals that they've ordered in the past, and they can reorder them quickly. So the next point, which is, what do the users need to do for this website or application to be a viable investment. So now here is the point that define the business goal. So what are the goals of the business as well, because how do they also do well. Now in this example of the food ordering application, so here we have seen that sometimes the websites or applications give certain offers to the user, like delivery is free above this much amount of order, or if you pay a certain amount, then the delivery will be free for the next 3 months, and so on. So this also helps the business retain their clients. So the user, since now they are actively involved in the business as well, so they have maybe availed the offer of free delivery, so they are more likely to order from this particular website. So this also caters to the application that the user is using. So coming to the next point, which is, how do we measure success? What is the extent of satisfaction for the user and the business goals? So, for this particular objective that we have to proceed with, it is important for us to see the usability objectives. So, there are certain usability objectives like the effectiveness, which talks about the success rate of the task. So, effectiveness, wherein the task completion rate, that how quickly was the user able to finish the task. So, if they had to place an order for food on this application, so how quickly were they able to identify the dish, maybe use some filters that they wanted, price comparison probably, or distance comparison, or other some comparisons that they want to do, and now they have filtered their options and then going to the checkout, making the payment. So how much time is being taken for this entire activity, start to end, and is it leading to any frustration for the user? Are they able to do it successfully? So for this particular objective where we have to measure the success, the task completion rate is a good indicator. At the same time, also the number of errors that the person has made, the user has made. So now, while entering the information, did they make some error, or while choosing, was the name misleading or some other feature confusing to them, or did the app pick out the wrong address, and did it ask them to confirm their order, or did it just directly go to the, say for example, the payment option of, say, of a certain card that they have saved. So any kind of error that the user may have encountered, so that also is a good indication which tells us whether the, the usability of the application, how well it is on a scale. So the next is the efficiency. So how quickly is the user able to achieve their final output that they are looking for, which in this case is the delivery app where they are placing the order. Now another of the usability features is the feature of learnability and relearnability. Learnability is that how quickly is a user able to find their way around the application and learn about how the app operates, or how to find the next step, for example. So how do they go about finding their way in the application, so that their check in to check out, the whole procedure is smooth. So how much time is required for them to learn how to navigate this app, and how many times, after how many interactions with this application, or in this food application, we can say that how many, after how many order placements is the user now able to learn, he now understands the application quite well, that he can operate it with confidence without errors, and also by saving their time. And finally, the engagement, which is the level of engagement that the application offers to the user. So is there any meaningful interaction with the platform? Is there some kind of a reminder, for example? And what is the depth of the interaction of the user with this particular application? So this tells us about the engagement aspect of it. And if the application is engaging and user friendly, then of course the user is expected to return to this particular platform in the future as well. So the next point here is identify the design constraint. So of course the design constraints can be several. So few of them are budget, timeline, project team, and technical limitations. So for the certain project, what kind of limitation are we dealing with? Depending on the project, this constraints may vary. There could be from one to several constraints can be there. And finally, the defined functional specifications. So just like we have, say, a computer and we have ROM, RAM, and other details. So similarly, for our project, what are the functional specifications that are important? So then those also need to be known to us. So now we can see that under need analysis we have the methods, and here we have interview, surveys, and focus groups. So depending on either of these methods of engagement with the stakeholders, these can take place online or offline. So in both modes this can be done. In the online mode, of course, there will be a meeting will be set up, and the two or the depending on whether it is a focus group discussion, it can take place. If it is offline, then it may be in one room where these two can sit, or depending on whether it is survey that needs to be filled or focus group. And of course it can be both open ended and closed ended. So open ended is where this is more like a conversation. So one question is asked, and from the answer, again maybe another question is asked, and it is like a conversation that is going on between two people or more people. Whereas the closed ended are, which are very structured, also known as structured and semi structured. So the structured one or closed ended questions are where the questions are to the point, and the answers for only those questions is sought from the person we are talking to. And here we will not deviate from the questions in the closed ended or the structured one. And in the middle is the semi structured, which is where we have a certain direction of how we want to go about this interaction, but this also allows one to have a bit of a free conversation as well. So now people can express their opinions in their own words, especially in the open ended or the unstructured. And the focus groups allow the users to share their opinions and concerns with stakeholders. Of course, one downside of focus group can be that now, since the interviewer is talking with maybe three or four people, so one person's opinion may sort of shadow the other person's opinion as well. So that can be one downside of it. And if that scenario is expected, then maybe one-on-one interviews are the best way to go about this particular situation. And of course, the observational analysis, where we observe the user, we see them in their natural setting, and we observe them interacting with the particular problem at hand, the particular product or service that they're interacting with. So it tells us about the issues that they're encountering while going about this particular activity. And now here we have two methods that I've shown here. So one is the method of shadowing and the other is the workplace tours. So they both are similar in the sense that they are both engaging with the user group. Now the difference is that in shadowing, the researcher or investigator is literally shadowing the user in question, and they are maybe spending from few hours to maybe days, or this activity can go on. And here they are talking as well. So there's an opportunity for the investigator to talk with the user, and if they have any question regarding the activity that they are doing, so they can also ask them. So it is quite a rigorous exercise wherein this person, the investigator, is really trying to understand the user behavior in their environment. The workplace tours, on the other hand, is an activity where generally group visits the workplace. So it can be, for example, we probably during school time we all have been to some kind of a factory. Like I remember we were taken to the Coke factory, and we also all of us got a bottle of Pepsi, the Coke to drink as well. So in the workplace tours, it is more limited when it comes to time. It cannot go on for the entire day or number of days. So the time limit is fixed. It can vary from half an hour to a few hours, maybe depending on the size of the factory. And here the a team is observing the people as they're going about their jobs that have been given to them. And but they may not be in an opportunity to interact with them, because of course they cannot be disturbed while they are doing their duty. But of course the video analysis that is done can of course be analyzed later on, and the problems can be identified there. So how is the need analysis conducted? So this process is broken down into some steps which makes it a little bit easier to understand and follow the process. So now understanding the user needs and goals. So some data that needs to be collected is first know your stakeholders. How many stakeholders do we have, and understand them. So maybe stakeholder mapping can be done. Define the usability objectives. We have discussed some in the few slides earlier. Define the functional specifications. So what kind of functional specifications will be there? So interviews and surveys, and know needs and preferences of the users, of the stakeholders, and structure the responses. So once we get the data back, then how do we structure them for our understanding, for the team's understanding, so that they may analyze the data more efficiently. So now the process of need analysis is broken down into these 4 steps we can see here. So one is the data analysis. So the data, the raw data that we have gathered, so that is processed and analyzed. In the next step, which is the prioritization. So here we will identify the hierarchy of the goals to be achieved. So we have seen that how there are wants and needs, both are there, that the user has. So we will be focusing on the most imperative needs, and then we will create a hierarchy for most important to least important need, so that we know that what is to be tackled first. So we are prioritizing the needs here, because we may identify after doing the survey and the interviews and gathering the data and analyzing it, that there are more than one needs that are there. So prioritizing will help us, because we may not have the sufficient resources to cater to all the 3 needs, for example. So we may want to take some other needs at a later time. So for now, we want to tackle the most important requirement or need, and for that, this hierarchy, when we using any kind of methods that we have discussed in the previous lectures, the matrix method, or maybe the dot method that we have seen. So we will identify the most important need, so we can take it forward. Next is recommendation and report. So now some recommendations will be made based on the analysis that we have done. And feedback loop. So of course feedback is important, because the final solution is, of course, it has gone through a certain number of steps and process, but we have seen that how we are always trying to find if there are further gaps are there in the solution that we have presented, because the loop needs to continue. So similarly here as well, the feedback will be taken time and again by the user, and this will help us ensure that there is timely and continuous improvement and refinement in the solution that we are offering to the user. So designed for experience. Now experience is something that cannot be maybe tangible. Again, it depends. Experience is something that we feel. So when we are traveling on a train, we get a certain experience. We see the countryside, we see the fields. It gives us some kind of a thrilling experience. Or when it is our first flight, so that experience is something that we have not felt before, when we suddenly were up in the sky. So experience is something that we always remember, and people, for this experience, they will go on vacations, go on trips, or maybe go bungee jumping, or maybe paragliding, because the experiences are something that we want to keep on experiencing, and it makes us feel good about ourselves, or uplifts our mood, or makes us feel good about a bad day. So depending on the situation, experience, of course, we're experiencing on a daily basis plethora of good and bad experiences, but here we are talking about the experience in the design and how and why it is important. So now we can see here certain points, UX, which is the user experience, and now the interaction that the user is having with, say, a brand, service, or product, is something that the user will always remember. And this is the reason sometimes the user will become follower of a certain brand, and sometimes the user can just despise the particular brand because of the experience they have got. So it becomes really important for the businesses to understand that how can they give the best experience to the user, because of course as a business owner we also want to maintain our user base. So we can see some points here, that the usefulness, satisfaction, convenience, credibility, accessibility, desirability, and value. So all of these points, these are together will give the user an experience, and we will see that how can this experience be improved, and we'll see a few case studies as well. So now we can see the definition here, that experience can be understood as a journey involving action, sensations, thoughts, and feelings. It's about comprehending and interpreting what is good around you, and engaging in an experience is similar to reading a book. You anticipate what next, get emotionally involved, and find it unique from your daily life. So sometimes when we are watching a television show or a movie or reading a book, we get so engrossed because of the experience it is giving us. Sometimes when we read a book, it is the despair the character is feeling, so we are also able to feel the same emotional pain. And sometimes when there is a lot of joy the character is feeling, we feel the same joy or the positivity that they are feeling. So the experience stands out and finally reaches a conclusion like the end of a good book. In short, an experience is a unique emotional journey that starts with anticipation and ends with completion. So now this is something which is of significance, that when we are about to experience something, there is a level of anticipation, and once it experience is over, so there is a completion to it. So we can also think of it in terms of, say, a trip that we have been planning to take. A long weekend is approaching and we want to go on a trip, so that anticipation that is building up, we have booked our tickets, booked our hotel, and the time to leave the house is approaching. The taxi may be there any minute to pick us up. And so that anticipation and then going through that experience of actually traveling and experiencing the new place, and then this whole experiencing culminating in completion. So that is the whole cycle. So now this cycle is also true for the products that the user interacts with. So here is a case study. So here is a case study by Nestle, and this is the strategy that they used to improve the user experience. So what Nestle did was, they used personalization to vary the content visitors would receive based on the time of the day along with other factors. And so they would anticipate the user's behavior or the time of the day, and then accordingly the experience would alter. So this is what they did. And then they also were able to judge the difficulty level of the user, the food trends, the inventory, the price of the items. So what kind of information the user would need, the ingredients and other things, and the weather, the location, which device the user is accessing this app on, and whether this is a first time user or a recurring user. So based on all that information, the application would give a very personalized experience to the user. So if it knows that the user will has brought, some condensed milk, or they have bought some chocolate, so it will probably give the recommendation to the user so that they can easily spot those items. So now based on the experience that they improved for the user, so the result was that there was 45% increase in the user flow, and so their user base increased than what it was before. So now when we are designing for experience, the key aspects are user centered design, and the principles of user centered design are to involve users in the design process from the start. So the users or the stakeholders, they need to be involved in the process so that they can tell what would they like. So maybe some wow factor that we have discussed, and also the imperative needs that they may have. Second is clarify the requirements. So, what are the requirements, the needs? Include the user feedback loop in the product's journey. So, where will this feedback loop be integrated in the journey of the user? So, that becomes important because if the loop is there, then there is scope for improvement. And finally, follow the iterative design process, fail early in the development cycle. So, since the design process is iterative, follow the iterative process, and if we fail early in the process, it's better because not much damage would have been done rather than if we fail later on. So, failing in the beginning is better. We learn from our mistakes, we can quickly get up and do a better job. So, we can see that understanding the behaviors and attitudes of the users is important, and empirical measurements are important when we have to really prove something. So, like in Nestle's case, we can see that 45%, that is a number, is a which is a significant number, which is informing us that how the, for example, the user base increased. So now again, empirical measurements need to be taken regarding the improvement, maybe before and after, and also the testing and problem fixing. So this is another case study by Spotify, where they also use the user centric approach, and they also design these algorithms to understand the user preferences. So if some user is listening to, say, classical music, and they are gravitating towards classical music, so now the application understands that this is what they lean towards, and if a playlist is to be made, so they will include more of those classical songs. Also, it creates personalized playlists like Discover Weekly and Daily Mix. So again, Spotify automatically makes a playlist rather than the user in olden times, like, we make those CDs and pen drives, put our favorite songs in there. So now, unlike that, Spotify will automatically understand the user's taste and create that mix, and it will mix it up for a little bit of that anticipation that we discussed, because it's going to give an experience if we know what is coming next. So that anticipation and fun is lost sometimes. So just guessing what may come next, that is also something that is going to keep one hooked. And also, the interface is user friendly, which allows users to easily navigate their vast music library. So here we can see the iterated design process loop, that how with the initial planning and the requirement analysis, implementation, testing, evaluation, and then coming up with the development, how we can integrate this into the design process. So now another important aspect that we have to remember is the emotional design angle. Now, being human beings and being a social mammal, so we all like company, we all like people, and the way we connect with people is emotionally. So we are emotional people driven by our emotions, and emotions can make one do very big things. We have seen a lot of movies and we have read books where people have literally made ways through the mountains because people are not able to access healthcare and other many such issues. So emotion is not a really weakness, but it is can be converted into strength. And now, one of the key aspects of human computer interaction is to understand the user's emotional quotient, that how, where is the user on this scale of the emotion. So now, if we convert this into a question, we can say that why is a user visiting the website or using the application? So, what makes the user go to a certain application again and again for purchase? There may be another two similar applications, but the user is going only to the first one again and again. So, why is that? And what are they hoping to achieve? So, what is it that they are wanting? So, now this can tell us that it is not just about the purchase or the products that are there on the website. All three websites may have the same kind of products, the similar kind of pricing, but the user is going to the first website or application because there is some kind of a bond that the person may have developed with this particular application. so which is making them go there. So this is something which is very important when it comes to design. So another example or case study we can see of emotional design is the Tom's shoes. Now this is brand which is very sustainable, and this particular brand started the one for one model, which is for every pair of shoes that was sold, they would donate one pair of shoes to a child somewhere. So now one for one is something that people will connect with, because the company, a big conglomerate, is donating a pair of shoe. So that means, so of course it tells us that they are not money minded, they are not just after their own sales, but they also care about the people, maybe the homeless, maybe the poor, maybe the ones who cannot afford shoes, which is a simple thing, but it's so important. Travel to school, the child may need the shoes, they may be living in a very difficult terrain. So that is why their strategy was that when customers buy a product from Tom's, they don't just get a pair of shoes, they also get the satisfaction of contributing to a good cause. So it makes them feel good about their purchase. So if there's any sort of, say, a guilt factor, so that is taken care of, because they know that the child will also get the shoe. Then another thing that they did was to expand into other social goods. So they started other, they branched out into some other areas as well. And this is a socially conscious brand. So it builds a strong emotional connection with consumers through storytelling about the impact of their purchases. So now this storytelling becomes an important factor here, because they are telling the consumer, the user, that how their purchase is making such an impact on the world around us. So again, it gives that positive experience to the user. Also, the use of sustainable materials so that they're not harming the environment, the ethical manufacturing practices, and also partnering with NGOs. So all of these, when this transparency is maintained between the user and the brand, so the it also allows the user to have more trust, more faith in the brand, because now through this brand they're also doing something good. So we can see that how attaching the user with their emotion, how it can be really beneficial. Of course, not in a deceiving manner, not taking advantage of the emotions of the user, but actually following it through with their own actions. So that leads to this balanced give and take, and at the same time ensures that the sustainability aspect is taken care of, and both the user and the company is in a partnership that is advantageous for both of them. So with this, I'll end the lecture here, and I will see you all in the next class. Thank you.